Perfect. What is up, guys? It's Tom Clark over at TFC IV MMA. And as you guys can see, we're joined with a real special guest today. We got smiling Sam Alvey. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing wonderful, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Pretty good. Can't complain. So we'll start off the episode pretty quick, man. How have you been, man? What have you been up to?
Just I live on a ranch now in Tennessee, so it's always something to do. There's always something breaking or something needs to get built. So I've just been doing all that. Actually, I was my goats all got out, and then my alarm went off, reminding me of this. Like, oh, okay, the goats will wait. I'll do this first. So there's always something to do. And then my jaw's back to healed, so I'm back to full sparring and all that. And I'm just getting ready for whatever's next.
That's awesome, man. Have you that you had your last fight in August, of course. So it's been a couple months. Glad to hear your jaw is all good. What are your kind of plans for the future, man?
I don't know. I'm figuring it out. I've got a long I I've got a long career in fighting, and I don't plan on being over anytime soon. I got to get back on the winning train. I know I've had a lot of close decisions and a couple ass whoopings come my way. So I gotta correct the ship. I gotta figure out what to do differently and then do it differently.
Yeah, man, you certainly had some close decisions and against some really like people can look at your resume, but if you look at the names on there, man, you had some real close fights with some like what was it? 3 weeks ago, Ryan Spann just had one of the best knockouts we've seen in the year, and you had a split decision with the guy. I mean,
And
you're
you watch that fight. I beat him. It was a bet for I beat him, but it is what it is. I didn't do it well enough, I guess. Two of the judges disagreed.
I would agree with you on that, man. And then like you ran into some tough where like I agreed on like the Jimmy Crute. I thought that was a real early stoppage. I could see why you were upset with Goddard and like just stuff like that. I thought you got a bad string of luck, but I've always
The
really
worst
liked you as a
referee in
fighter.
the UFC.
Yeah, a lot of people share that view, man. I know like Dominic Cruz goes at Keith Pearson and people like one fighter may not like a ref, but there's several people that are not big fans of Mark Goddard. That's for sure.
No, yeah, he's kind of a dick backstage too.
Oh, really? Maybe that's
Yeah,
just
part
the
of
Brit in him,
language.
but yeah,
It
oh,
might
you're
be
all
it.
good.
Maybe he's a great guy. He's just got that Brit twang.
That could be it, man. So you're down at a ranch up in Tennessee. I'm in Tennessee as well. I know you were out the majority of your career. You were trained out of California and such. When do you make the move to Tennessee, man?
I've been here for just over a year now. I think I got here last November, last October, somewhere around then. And I've loved the area. I've loved Tennessee. I got to fight here twice. I'm not done training in California. Like I'm still doing my camps out there. California's of the 50 states, it's got to be bottom two.
I'd
And,
agree
and
with you.
I had to make that jump to get out of there. I didn't want to go back to Wisconsin where I grew up and spent most of my life. It's too cold there. So after just falling in love with Tennessee, it's hot and humid, and it has the seasons. They're just shorter.
Yeah, I actually moved down here from New Hampshire. So you're a Wisconsin guy. I'm
Okay.
I'm I'm a New Englander. So I came down here to escape that cold weather, and I'm with you. The summers are hot and humid, but I'll take those short winters with no snow. And if there is snow,
Yeah.
it's gone by the next day. So I love it, man.
Oh yeah, gone by later the same day. And it's so much different. Up in Wisconsin, when it snowed, you go to school. I mean, it has to snow like a lot. It's got to be windshield high before they cancel school. Here, it might snow tomorrow, so they cancel school.
Oh yeah, I know it's crazy. I mean, I remember growing up in New Hampshire. I'm sure it's similar for you in Wisconsin. If there was under 6 inches of snow, you were probably still going to school that day. And now,
Yeah,
if you mention there's snow a week from now, it's the stores, everything's empty. You're saying, oh my goodness, they panic
yeah,
like crazy. It blows my
it's
mind.
so fun. Yeah, last year was my first winter here, and it was really funny. So and maybe it's right. Maybe nobody here can drive in the snow. That might be it. So maybe it's worth closing down.
I get you, man. I get you 100%. So you were obviously in the UFC for 8 years. You've had experience in the UFC, you Bellator, the Ultimate Fighter. You fought some big names, got wins over guys like Rashad Evans, John Volante, guys like that. Looking back at your UFC career in those 8 years, and even your time on the Ultimate Fighter, what was kind of your favorite? What was your favorite time in your career? What was your favorite performance? Something like that for you.
Yeah, so the Nate Marquardt fight is one of my favorite. He was my coach on the Ultimate Fighter, and I've got such a big career. I've gotten to fight just about everyone and anyone I've wanted to. I got to fight a coach of mine, and that, I mean, fighters don't get the opportunity to do that. And so I got to fight my coach, and that really meant something to me. Even getting the win over someone as great and as established as Nate Marquardt is.
He was such a beast too, especially back in the Strikeforce days. And I look at that as one of your best wins as well. I know a lot of people see your resume, and Rashad is obviously probably the biggest name that most people know because of the John Jones fight, stuff like that. But I'd agree, the Marquardt one was definitely one of the best because he was an animal back in his day.
The king of pancrase.
Yep, he was. Oh man, I love going back and watching those old fights between Pancrase, Pride. It was a different time in MMA, and I love the changes we made because I remember I started first watching MMA in about 2008 or so as a young kid, and to find someone that watched MMA, it was nearly impossible at that time. You remember that's about when you started, and now
Yeah,
it's
I wasn't watching MMA at the time. I was just fighting. Yeah, and
yep.
I probably 2 or 3 years before I learned that it was on TV and you could do it for a living.
No, I know. Yeah, it certainly jumped a lot. Obviously, the Connors, the Rondas started it, but we have so many stars kind of in the UFC now. They're bringing that name up. And I know the whole interview, this whole thing kind of happened because I kind of barked at you on TikTok a little bit about one of these stars. We got several big fights coming up in this next year, several big potential fights. I know you had mentioned the Hamzat Chimaev Colby Covington as one of your favorites. That's one I'm really looking forward to. Let's start with kind of your opinions on how that one goes, and then maybe we can talk over some other fights we look forward to seeing.
Yeah, so I assume it's going to be 5 rounds. And 5 rounds, I think Colby wins. He's usually a safe to say decision, but Kamzat has gotten so tired come round 3, and he's only been there once, I think, maybe twice. That he doesn't have that cardio, and he's just going to get outboxed. He's got that big punch, and Colby's been known to be hit, but really only by Usman. Nobody else has been able to touch him. I think his wrestling is definitely better than Chimaev's. I think the only place he's down in points is on the pure striking power, and that might be all that's needed. That might be all that Chimaev needs is to land that one big punch. But Colby's so experienced, has such a good wrestling base and good boxing. He might be the best boxer in the UFC, or have the best boxing in the UFC. I think he just eats Chimaev up.
And his what makes his boxing so special is it's so unorthodox, but his cardio it's like someone just tosses a blanket on you. The way he's on you the whole fight. The
Mm-hmm.
issue I see running into that fight with, I think Colby technically may have the better wrestling, but I don't know, man. Just watching Hamzat, like the strength the dude has, just the way he manhandles people. And I know, so I was at UFC 273 with him versus Burns, and what a wild fight that was. And
Uh,
he was definitely gassed come that third round, but I mean he was still able to keep the pace. And then I also think a big thing in the gassing is getting hit with those shots, and that's something I don't know if we all know Colby is kind of like the Diaz brothers, where he all goes for volume. He doesn't really hit with power. So it would
mhm.
be interesting to see, like, because we saw in Hamzat's first couple fights, he wasn't finishing everyone in under 5 minutes like he has been as of late, but he was having this forward pressure so crazy, and then barely even sitting down between the rounds. So I think
Mhm.
Gilbert's power definitely could have aided to him gassing, but I'm really excited for that fight. I mean, like
Yeah,
it's
I hope it happens. I mean, it's one of those fights nobody wants to fight Kamzat because I think he's ranked number 5 or 6, and Colby's still number 1 or 2. And honestly, Colby has an easy time with Leon Edwards. Colby has an easy time with just about everyone else left in the division, except for Usman, of course. So he would be risking his rank to go down and fight Kamzat. But I think the fight makes sense, and I'm a big fan of Colby.
Yeah, me too. And I think it probably will happen. If I had to guess, probably is the co-main event, Leon versus Usman 2, which were
Oh,
rumored to be in middle
I
March.
I hate it being co-main event. I want it to be 5 rounds. Co-main that's what Burns versus him was, and I think they're trying to protect Kamzat. And I hope it's 5 rounds. I want it to be a main event of a smaller card. I'm cool with that. I hate the 3 rounds because the 3 rounds goes to Kamzat's favor, where he can
Yep.
coast a little bit. He can win one round, kind of win another round, and then just coast. 5 rounds, it's a different fight, and I think to prove he's ready for that title shot, um, I think he needs. And it's funny. I think he will beat Leon and lose to Usman. Khamzat will. So I think the UFC has a way of making sure the guy they want to get a title shot gets the title shot. And I
Yep.
think that's how they would do it with Khamzat. They'd give him a 3-round fight against Colby, and see what happens from there.
I could also see them if they were to do it. If you were to do the Edwards Usman card, where that's the only title fight on the card, I could definitely see them still having Colby Hamza as the co-main, but just doing it as 5 rounds. Kind of like you remember they had Robbie Lawler, Nick Diaz, and that comeback. They did that 5 rounds. They've done it several times where they'll add the kind of 5-round fight in there for the fans' sake.
I hope so. I think that should be Colby's one thing. I'll fight whoever you want me to fight. Give me 5 rounds.
I agree with you 100%. He's one of those guys where if he has a 3-round fight, it's just a disservice to him at this point because, like you said, he's in kind of that position where I think we have several guys in the welterweight division that I think are better than the current champion in Leon Edwards. It's almost like the same at 185 right now. I mean, Alex Pereira had this awesome knockout, Israel Adesanya, but do we really favor Alex Pereira over a guy like Robert Whitaker with all those skills? It's tough. Pereira could definitely smoke him, but Whitaker with that ground game, like it's one of those things where they got stylistic matchups where they won the title, but I still think there's several guys in the division who could beat them and probably give them a lot of problems.
Hey, and the UFC wanted that fight, the Pereira versus Stylebender. Now I thought Strickland was going to win. Strickland's a good friend. I thought he was going to do it, and Strickland got slept. But I think Strickland was number 5 or 6 at the time. And to go from 5 or 6 to a title shot is only because the UFC wants that fight. And so they'll do the rematch, and they probably want Izzy to win the rematch so that they can do a trilogy.
Yep,
that's probably what they want. And Izzy was close to winning because of Pierre Pereira. How do I say his name? The other Brazilian fella. He will get beat up by most of the top 5, I think. That Izzy fight showed that he doesn't have any ground game. Like he's useless on the ground. Izzy was able to do what he wanted on the ground, and Izzy's not a ground guy. And I think everybody, Vettori smokes him. I think everybody from this point on just shoots on him. And so they don't want him champion anymore. They want Izzy back, who's better at sprawling.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, that was just. I know why he got the title fight. Obviously, it was the money. And then it was also one of those cases that happen with the great champions where when you clear out a division, you can't be having trilogies with people you beat twice. Like that's the tough part. So it was Strickland's title fight. He was going to get it. So then when Pereira beat him, I see he kind of took the hype Strickland had going for him and took the title fight. And you see how it is in some of those weight classes where, like we saw it with John Jones. I mean, there were certain fighters. He was like Anthony Smith, great fighter, but I don't think anyone really thought Anthony Smith was a challenge to John Jones. But John had beaten everybody else in the division. It's just it's one of those things. That's another big fight that could be happening later on next year. Who would you favor in the John Jones Francis Ngannou potential super fight?
I think everyone in the heavyweight division except for Stipe smokes Jones.
Really?
Yes. And I hate putting Stipe in the category of who doesn't. Everyone talks about Jones's, fight IQ. I hate the term because it doesn't mean anything. It's just a way to say, yeah, he's great. He's fight IQ. If you're going to use the term, he's the only guy that consistently does illegal stuff to people in the cage. The knees, the elbows, the eye pokes, the this, that, everything he does tends to be illegal. And that is not a fight IQ of any sort. What his advantage is he has an 84-inch reach. And that reach he uses, and it's hard to use reach like that unless you know how, and he uses it well between his jabs and his long crosses, and he uses his elbows like a lot of people use jabs. He's able to keep that distance. But as soon as he starts going up against people with long reach as well, such as Gustafsson, such as Reyes, even Santos a little bit, Santos I think 77, people that can touch him, he starts to get touched. These heavyweights nobody has as long a reach as he does except for Stefan Struve. But Ngannou's got a long reach. Derek Lewis has a big reach. All these dudes are going to be able to eat his little jabs and come in with a big punch. He's going to get hit. He's going to get knocked out. Everyone's relying on his wrestling to be the thing that beats Francis. Francis is a big dude to take down. And we saw against the Stipe fight that he's got some takedown defense. And you have to get in there without getting touched. I think
Yep.
Jones gets slept by everyone but Stipe because Stipe's arms are so short.
I'd have to disagree with you on that one. The big thing, I think the wrestling would be a factor against Ngannou. But to be fair, I think the biggest advantage John would have, especially against Francis Ngannou, is John Jones, as we all know, uses the oblique kick and such, and that man can pick apart a knee like no other, especially with Francis just coming off a knee surgery. John's very aggressive with the kicks, very aggressive with his attack at the legs, at the body. I think he almost does what Stipe, because we saw Francis had trouble on the feet with Cyril Gane. And I think Cyril Gane will probably be the toughest stylistic matchup for John in the top five because he's just as light on his feet, just as crafty on the feet as John is. And we saw Francis struggle on the feet against Cyril. So I think John could almost just keep distance, jab, leg kick, beat up the legs of Francis. And I also don't think Francis would be able to get John down the way he did Cyril, just personally. I mean,
Yeah,
I don't see it happening.
The problem with fighting a fight with leg kicks is you have to not get hit. And Francis has such heavy forwards pressure that he would touch Jones at some point. And maybe when he touches him, Jones gets takedown then. But it's the size matters. And as big as ever, Jones had some help getting bigger because he's a dirty cheater. But there is a huge size difference between Jones and Ngannou. He's going to get touched. He gets touched by people with shorter arms than Ngannou. I think that those oblique kicks they don't hurt that much. They have the potential to hurt everyone. I've only seen him actually hurt a person once or twice, and I don't think either of them had to do with John Jones throwing him. I think he would get punched. I think he would get hit, that big crust on the middle, as Jones is trying to do those oblique kicks. He's just too much size coming behind Ngannou.
I get you. And this is why I love talking to fighters. Like I have a friend of mine who does jiu-jitsu very consistently, and I love talking MMA with him because you guys can give us kind of a different perspective on, you guys have been in there. You guys do this kind of stuff every day. You did this for a living for 14 years. So I love getting your guys' opinion on it, but we're disagreeing on both of these so far. Let's see if we can find one that we agree on. Another big title fight rumor that's going to be happening first quarter of next year. How do you see Henry Cejudo, Aljamain Sterling going?
I love the fight. I'm not Sterling. I'm taking Cejudo. The only thing that makes me sit away from Cejudo is his time off. He's been down for 4 years, 3 years, and that can hurt a guy. But it's going to be a wrestling match, and Sterling is not a better wrestler than Cejudo. I don't think the size difference will help him. I don't think any of that. I think he will get taken down and mauled by Cejudo in a wrestling match. It's just a different type of wrestling. As good as you are, you put an Olympic gold medal on somebody, and they are better. I look at Dan Henderson, who didn't place in the Olympics but wrestled, and outside of DC, I've never seen anyone do anything to him. In the practice room, Hendo takes everyone down. I mean, he mauls. I've seen him maul Sonnen. I've seen him maul Dominic Reyes. I've seen him maul everyone in the practice room. And Cejudo is always such a heavy grappler in the cage. He's not going to be that out of practice. I think he gets in there, gets takedown, and does what he wants to.
Yeah, well, finally we find one we agree on here, so I like that. I'm going to go with Cejudo on this one too. And why I love Henry Cejudo so much is I was listening to Demetrius Johnson on Joe Rogan's show a couple weeks ago, and he just said, like, now that he's training with Cejudo, he says Henry analyzes fights better than almost anyone you know, and he just finds ways to beat you. Like we've seen it with Demetrius Johnson, may be one of the biggest enigmas because he's so skilled, and Henry was the only guy in the UFC at 125 that was able to beat him. And he went to the decision, got it done, and then he goes in against a guy like Dillashaw, who I think is in the conversation for greatest bantamweight of all time. It was a tough cut, yeah, but it's still TJ Dillashaw, and Henry Cejudo puts him away pretty early. It was a little bit of a controversial stoppage, but still a great performance by Cejudo. We see him take down Marlon Moraes, who had just knocked out Aljamain Sterling, and Henry Cejudo takes him to town. And I think a perfect example of him just finding ways to beat you was the Dominic Cruz fight. I mean, we saw in the Dillashaw fight, TJ almost realized it too late in the fifth round. He realized how much these leg kicks were damaging Cruz. But at that point, it was too late to do anything. We saw Cejudo come out and just beat up the legs of Dominick Cruz, and then he knocks him out a little bit later in the fight. So Cejudo's one of those guys. He finds a way to beat you. And Aljo, the thing I will give him in this fight is Cejudo's definitely got the wrestling. Aljo's got the jiu-jitsu, but I don't see it being as effective when you have a guy who as good of a wrestler as Henry is. Like, look at Islam versus Charles. I mean, Charles wasn't even able to use any of that jiu-jitsu when you're working with a master wrestler like that. And the size could be another factor, obviously, because Aljamain's a massive 145, a 135er. He could be a massive 145er, how big he is. I met him back in Jacksonville, and yeah, he's a big guy. I met him and Jan, and he's definitely the bigger guy there. And so it'll be interesting. That's a fight I'm really excited to see. The rumors are that that's going to be the co-main event for Jones Ngannou. So that's going to be a stacked card. We know it is.
Yeah, it is a good card.
Yep. So
I hate that Jones is getting a title shot. I hate that he doesn't. I hate that he doesn't have to beat anyone. I like that they're not. I hated more that they were going to give him Stipe because I thought he was going to beat Stipe. Everyone talks about Jones being the greatest of all time. I hate that. He's a dirty cheater. He has dirtied our sport. Everything he has done from the beginning to the end is cheating, whether it be with drugs or eye pokes. He's just a cheater. And now people just forgive that. And and they keep. So now he's going up, taking 3 years off and just getting a title shot. I hate it.
If we had never seen it before, I'd be kind of upset about it. But we've seen the UFC do this several times. Like we saw it with George when George came back, and George kind of played it perfectly because as much as I like Michael Bisping, stylistically, Michael Bisping was the easiest matchup for George.
Oh yeah,
that's why he didn't come back and fight a guy like Luke Rockhold, because Luke Rockhold would have been bigger with that grappling. So George did kind of a similar thing, and then he came back for the perfect matchup. We saw Jose Aldo go from 145 down to 135, lose, and still get a title fight. So, I mean, if it had never happened before, I may be a little upset, but we've seen the UFC do it several times where it is what it is at this point. You can't really, unfortunately, it's just one of those things.
I bitch about it online. I do.
Yeah, I get you, man. So you're in Tennessee now. Where are you currently training at, Sam?
Guardian MMA here in Murfreesboro. And then I coach and then train with my friend Tom Galicchio down in Chattanooga on Wednesdays. So if anyone's in any of those areas, I'd love to work with you.
Perfect. I love that. I mean, I live in Chattanooga, and
fantastic.
One of my coworkers, he trains over at Militia, just does a little part-time jiu-jitsu, but he loves it. He loves training with Tom. He says he sees you there every now and then. So that's awesome that you're teaching some classes over there, because that's something I think, like I said, I love talking MMA with guys who have been in there. And I think teaching MMA would be great for you as well, because you have so much experience in this realm of it.
Yes, I was a head coach of MMA before I knew how to do anything in MMA.
Oh, wow. That's awesome, man. So you have been doing that before.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man. So you're doing that, doing some training, still doing some coaching, and getting ready for a comeback. You said you're not calling it quits yet.
Not calling it quits yet. I'm doing something somewhere. I'm just not sure when or where.
Perfect. Is there any sort of time frame you're going to try? Is there a time when you want to come back that would be ideal for you?
My wife and I, we're starting to put feelers out there, talking to some organizations. I would love to do the bare knuckle fighting. I've kickboxed, I've MMA'd, I've jiu-jitsu, I've wrestled. I've never boxed. So that's something I would like to do. So I can do the bare knuckle. I would like to, I fought with Bellator, but it was under Bjorn. I'd love to do it under Mr. Coker. And then the PFL. PFL is about my favorite thing to watch right now. I love these tournaments. I love tournament styles. That's when I was in Bellator originally. It was the tournament style.
Yep.
So that PFL is bringing it back with even bigger purses. That would be a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I've been so impressed with PFL. I mean, they jumped on the scene kind of quick, but they've got some. Like I'm a guy. I listen to Kenny Florian and John Anik's show pretty regularly, so I love Kenny Florian. And to have him and Randy Couture both in the booth, I love that. Two guys with so much experience, know what they're talking about. And the events are just a great time. I remember they were down in Atlanta about 6 months ago or so. And I went down there with a friend, and it was an awesome time. It's like, as much as I loved going to the UFC event, there's so many people. I was still able to meet a bunch of fighters, have a good time, get close to the octagon. But PFL, it's you can be. I was cage side for the majority of the
Yeah,
night, and
that's cool.
it was awesome. So I look forward to hopefully seeing you in either bare knuckle, PFL, or even a return to Bellator. I think you do great in either three. So I look forward to
Yeah.
that. And
Well, I appreciate that.
of course, and before we go, Sam, do you have any other messages for all the Sam Alvey fans out there?
Follow me on TikTok. I have so much fun on TikTok. Follow me there. I get back to everyone. I talk to most everyone, and I post daily. I have a lot of fun on TikTok, so follow me there, and Twitter and Instagram and all that other stuff. But TikTok particularly. Oh, YouTube. I'm trying to. I always forget YouTube. I'm trying to grow my YouTube. That one I can put a lot of what I do in TikTok, but longer format. So I've had some fun in that too, and I'm learning how to edit. And I got to remember, I always forget with YouTube, you got to have the phone sideways, and I always forget to do that. But I'm getting better. My editing skills are growing.
There we go, man. I love to hear that. I've seen you got quite the following on TikTok. I couldn't believe I saw the other day you're up to like almost 200,000 followers or something
I'm
crazy
getting
like
real
that.
close. I'm getting real close, and I really do the best I can to interact with the fans of the sport.
Yeah, I love that, man. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with me, man. It was a great time talking to a fellow Tennessean who always a fan favorite in the UFC, and I'm sure will be a fan favorite in whichever company you choose to go with next. So I hope you have a great rest of your day. All right, Sam?
Hey, I appreciate it. You too, sir.
Thank you.
Hi, bye.
Bye.